Today we're going to be doing debt sizing. This is something very frequently used in project finance models. So if you're preparing for an infrastructure case study, a model interview, this will definitely come in handy. If not as something that will show up on the test itself, at least to be able to speak through it during an interview on how you would approach this kind of problem. So let's get started. First things first, as usual, we're going to prep the workspace. So this is standard formatting that I use in all of my model interviews. And we're going to make this go out to 2040. Now, any kind of debt sizing in infrastructure will typically start with CFADs, cash flow available for debt service. Add some pretty formatting here. And then just to simulate some cash flows, we're going to give it random number between 500 and 1,000. Format it nicely. Now every time we refresh, we get a new random string of numbers. Of course, CFADs is made up of two components. You start with your EBITDA, less any maintenance CapEx. So let's say this is actually our EBITDA, and for the purpose of this, I'll just say there's no maintenance CapEx. And then we are going to lock these cash flows and make them blue because it's a hard code. Formatting is very important. So now that we have our CFADs, what comes next? Well, what we're actually doing is sizing to a target DSCR, debt service coverage ratio. And we're going to say, these are merchant cash flows. They're not contracted. They're kind of jumping around all over the place. So let's give it a 2x. DSCRs are traditionally written up to 2 decimal places. So we'll do a 2x, make this blue, do a pretty background. Give it some spacing, and now we've got our 2x DSCR. And before we go ahead, we're going to say, how much debt do we want? When do we want it? So let's make some flags. Debt issuance flag and a debt term flag. For flags, this is kind of my preferred method. Make this blue, and I'll add some dates here. So now we got our debt issuance flag and our debt term. So debt will be issued at entry in 2025 year end, and the term will go on until, we'll say, starting 2025, and we'll say it's a 10-year term. So let's format this. Now we got our 10-year term. And then, again, this is my preferred way making flags, right? So you don't need an if function that actually slows things down a little bit. It's kind of overcomplicating. So what you can actually do is just write the condition in parentheses, you multiply it by a 1, and instead of spitting out, this will give you a true or false, as you can see here. Instead of spitting out a true or false, this converts it to a number, and so it just gives you a 0 or 1. At the bottom here, we'll do 1 times that is greater than, so then your operating term is starting after your debt is issued, less than or equal to your end term, right? So then you see the debt is issued in 2025 and it's outstanding until year end 2035, so 10-year term. The SCR will just multiply this by the debt term. And if you multiply these two, or divide rather, you get to your debt sizing cash flows. Give it a nice little if error function just to keep the Excel from yelling at you. And these are actually the cash flows that we are using to size our debt. Oops. So these are all the cash flows that we can actually use to service the debt. Now, the next thing that's important is, what is the interest rate? This is going to be important. This is going to matter a lot in sizing. Interest rate and discount factor. You'll see why in a second. So for now, let's say, again, merchant debt, right? We'll say this is 4% all-in cost of debt. Could be cheap, could be expensive, depends how your bank views it, depends on the asset. I think 4% is kind of reasonable in this day and age in 2025, so we'll go with that. Again, a little formatting. This might seem annoying, but you only have to do it once, and then you can just copy it over everywhere else. So now we have our interest rate, and the discount factor is actually an interesting little function. It's going to be that times, how did it go again? 1 over that plus this times the flag. It's something like this. Let's see if I got it right. Oops. 1 over 1 minus. Nope. 1 plus. Yeah, there we go. That's our discount factor. And this is basically saying that if we are charging 4% interest every year, then the actual value of these debt sizing cash flows, so do max debt service, is actually reduced because we do have to pay our interest. Right, so these are the actual cash flows that we are allowed to use to service our debt. I don't know why I put a line on it. It doesn't need a line. Now, you take the sum of all of these. That is your maximum possible debt service. Actually, don't need to do the pretty formatting because we already have it for the 10. Although this should be blue. So this is our maximum allowed debt service, very important number. This is actually our principal that we can issue year 1. So we can now move on to building the debt balance, the debt schedule. Call it a schedule. This is a corkscrew, so we'll do beginning balance, issuance, amortization, ending balance. Now our issuance is going to be just this number times the issuance flag. Beginning balance is beginning balance. Ending balance is the sum. And here's our corkscrew. It's a bit incomplete now because we aren't paying the debt down, so that's a problem. But let's move on for now and just do the interest expense. And this is preparing for an interview, so we're going to keep it really simple. Just use beginning of period interest expense. Now, people have strong feelings about this, but my 2 cents is if you're in an interview, you're kind of maximizing for time, simplicity. This is something that if they question you after the interview, why did you do this? You can just say it was a simplifying assumption. In the real world, you would obviously use an average of beginning and ending balance, but that creates circularities and you don't really want to do that. So we'll do beginning balance for now. And then your amortization, super simple. It's actually everything that's left over. So it's your debt sizing cash flows minus interest expense. Now that we have amortization, we can just plug that right in here. And you'll see that gets you with a little negative. So what we want to do is a minimum of your actual amortization and your beginning balance. That way, nice and clean, we just pay off the whole thing. No more tail. This is your total debt service, which means that if you take your total CFADs divided by your debt service, by the same formatting here, and then make the error go away, that gives you 2x. So your implied DSCR. That's just a check. Best practice is to always leave checks everywhere in your model. Just gives the reader comfort that you're doing things right. And there you have it. Fully finished debt build. If you want to try something fun, you can kind of change the interest expense year over year. Maybe that's an 8, maybe that's a 3, right? It's based on a SOFR. Maybe it goes up to 10 for a few years. I don't know. And it stays fully dynamic, so it can size debt to any interest rate that you choose, even variable interest rates, because of the way that we are discounting these debt sizing cash flows. And that's that. This is a very easy to replicate module that you can plop into any kind of infrastructure interview. Thanks for watching.